Morning, everybody, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting.
No, I tell you.
No, it's not echoing. Wonderful. Thank you. Extraordinary meeting of the 8th of July, 2026. We're going to start with a karakia. Kia ora, te marilo, kia whakapapa pamana, punamu, te moana, e huarahi mātou, tō araha atu, araha mai, ako kia tātou katoa. Homie huie, ai kie. This morning I have apologies from Councillor McLean. If somebody's happy to move those, thank you, Tracy. Seconded Sarah. Favour. Aye. And we have Councillor Bob Scott joining us online this morning. Welcome, Bob. To begin our day, we have the Public Forum, Cromwell Dogs Trust. Eddie, I have seen you.
Is that a real dog?
Everybody who is part of the Cromwell Dogs Trust who would like to be at the table is welcome to join us.
We have some slides, if they could please.
Wayne will line those up for you.
Morning, everyone. Your worship, mayor and councillors. If Liz is feeling under the weather today, I will be speaking on behalf of Cromwell. I'd like to read a short 1-minute statement that is separate to our presentation, if this would be allowed. To ensure the council has the full picture, much of the recent discourse around this issue has been around risk and liability. We have no right to discuss risk management with you as we are not professionals. It is for this reason that Cromwell Dogs sought legal advice to address CODC concerns around risk and present a way forward. Our barrister delivered a formal letter to this chief executive and me yesterday afternoon. We request that this letter be formally tabled with this item. It outlines that the council cannot legally remove this dog exercise area by an ordinary resolution today without triggering a special consultative procedure under the Local Government Act. We want to work with you on a way forward. We go to the next slide, please. Looking ahead, I want to emphasize that our trust is really hopeful about the long-term future of this land. Slide illustrates the positive opportunities on the table through the expression of interest process. While the trees remain standing, it's vital that the dog walking status be maintained for the well-being of the community. We also have a second arborist report after we met with the motocross group that assessed whether that triangle that they have expressed interest in the remaining block could be remained if that was to be removed. We didn't deem that relevant to the proceedings today, but we have that ready to go. Can we please go to the next slide? Thank you. Cost neutral. An objective this council has repeatedly stated it wants to protect, avoid costs to ratepayers. Staff are recommending an unbudgeted harvest that will cost ratepayers between $200,000 and $400,000 or a $150,000 fence. Meanwhile, local arborist estimates confirm that targeted expert recommended approach, felling just the problem trees in branches, costs between $1,500 and $7,000 total. Next slide. This chart demonstrates the scale of the cost difference, highlighting the unbudgeted financial hit ratepayers will take if you vote for option 1 today. In contrast, there is little to no burden on ratepayers to keep this block safe and open. Next slide, please. Both forestry assessments agree that these trees are still immature and slow growing. The cut above report clearly notes that delaying this harvest allows the stand to mature, significantly increasing its timber value while preserving environmental and community benefits in the interim. Rushing to fell them now locks the council into a low value return while stripping the community of a beloved amenity. Can we go to the next slide, please? Voting for option one triggers an immediate four-year ETS clock. leaving this council exposed to a massive 3.1, not 2.6 million, as the agenda states, carbon liability. If you shift the land use away from forestry, if replanted, it locks you into a 10-year cycle. Option 2 has no negative drawbacks. It carries no immediate ETS implications, requires no immediate replanting capital, protects ratepayers, and allows the standing timber to grow in value. Most importantly, it gives staff the necessary time to establish alternative off-leash spaces and run the formal expressions of interest process for future land use. Option 2 is a massive show of good faith to 1,129 residents. Couple more slides, thank you. Council's active long-term and annual planning explicitly record that these blocks are held not just as an investment, but because they provide critical value for the community for walking and biking. Keeping this space open allows us to directly satisfy 4 out of 5 of your own spatial planning goals, fostering community identity, ensuring inclusive multi-generational spaces for seniors and families, promoting active lifestyles, and directly connecting our people to nature. Unfortunately, this option will not make housing more affordable. This space is a constant in many people's lives. Sarah, who do you walk at the Pines with?
Oh, my sister and Judy's mum, who's in her 80s, every day, and Judy, every single day. And we see the same people every day there. 11 o'clock.
That's how we
Rain
met.
on shine. That's how we all met.
Yeah.
And I work by myself, so it's really.
Yeah, my mum, 84 actually, another birthday, walks with us every day because it's flat, accessible land. I feel I should identify myself as Judy Cockram. I sent some of you an email last night because it was in the process of researching through your own documents that I discovered the deforestation clause around the ETS stuff. Of course, I had no ability to check that with the appropriate experts, so I felt I should include it. If you'd like me to explain any of that, please feel free to ask questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Judy. This place is clearly important to our community. We have had people tell us that how this has been handled is making them consider leaving this town. And then our final slide, please. Councillors, we ask that you please listen to the 1,129 local voices standing behind us. Decline to adopt recommendation B, accept our community's assistance, and keep this Sandflat Road Pines open. Ngā mihi, thank you for your time.
Very much. Eddie and the team, including ferry team members. Very cute. Funny. Has anybody got any questions for Eddie or Ash?
Just a question about and maybe for you down there, the $3 million. Is that some calculation that you've done yourself, or?
Based on today's price for carbon credits, right, which is 55 point, sorry, I don't quite remember.
Okay.
It's sort of kind of $10 more than the $45 identified in the agenda. Yeah, so that's why that number is different.
I think it was that price on the 30th of April for an extraordinary meeting. Yeah.
We've been rushed to find details, obviously, but we have tried to carefully check all the details we've presented you. We find it strange that in a project of turning Sandflat Road into a land bank of some sort, that will be valued over twice, maybe even 3 times the size of Memorial Hall project, that you are not getting serious input into how to manage that in an accounting manner, in a legislation manner, in all the things that councils have to deal with. It worries me that councillors are asked to vote on decisions where the quality of information seems so poor.
Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the next part of the meeting. I anticipate you would like to.
Thank you.
The declarations of interest begin on page 6. Just a reminder, I know we looked at them a couple of weeks ago, but does anybody have anything on there that need to raise this one issue, one item? Perfect. Now move to the only report is before us, Bannockburn Forestry Blocks, and we welcome David, Specs, Saskia and Nick.
Got it.
Morning. So firstly,
And we should hopefully have Ellen Laurie, our forestry consultant, joining us as well online.
Welcome here. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on.
Good morning.
so the purpose of the report in front of you is to consider harvesting the 57 hectare forestry block off Sand Flat Road. I take the report as read, but want to reiterate all the figures in there were just indicative. The actual figures were to be tabled today. So the way the forestry cycle is, they didn't have the forestry figures. We were writing the report last week. However, they got updated on the data this week. So
So we're just tabling that now for you all. The document that Ellen put together for us.
Thank you. That's the thing on the document. That's the one with the difference.
I will just note too, while this is being tabled, that the email received yesterday from a number of Cromwell, those emails have been shared with all councillors.
Thank you.
So the document that you've got in front of you is based on a meeting that we had with our contractor last week. We discussed different scenarios on how we could proceed. You'll see scenario 1 is looking to harvest both blocks during the same operation. Scenario 2 is to harvest block 2 to return next year for block 1. And scenario 3 is to harvest block 1 and move on to block 2. The idea here was originally, obviously, we were looking to realise economic efficiencies by doing both at the same time. That date, we've had global crisis and there's been massive changes. So at this point, if we want to crack on and get the Bannockburn harvest for development, we need to consider whether we're doing both blocks at the same time or delaying or the council decides is appropriate. You'll see on page 2, we've got it identified as scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3 with the 3 different prices. Yes.
You want to just talk through, because we've only just received that. Can you talk through the can you talk through them?
Yes. So scenario 1, again, due to the delay, what we don't want to do is end up harvesting when we enter a dry season. Obviously, then we're going to look at increased fire risk. For neighbouring properties is a real concern. The overall advantage of doing both blocks at the same time is that they'll bring down a bigger crew. So the bigger crew is cheaper to mobilise and it will be faster. They reckon a good maybe 3 or 4 weeks efficiency by doing both at the same time. Obviously, the disadvantage is that with the delay we've had now, we may be looking like we're pushing into November. That's completely weather dependent. It depends on a lot of factors. Scenario 2 would be harvest one block first and then commence the other block following maybe April next year. The advantages of that is that the bigger block will be felled in a quieter period. There's less dust, there's less fire risk. It may mean that we time it well and we're not flooding the market with so much timber. There's a lot of different considerations that happen there. Again, the disadvantage though is that the pricing frame is further out, and then there's less surety on we're going to get. It's very cyclical. Scenario 3 is to do the large block first and then use that large crew to then move on to the block 2. Again, cheaper rate on the intermodal volume. There's a saving to not have setup costs. Deals with some hazards, creates time efficiencies, but again, we face the risk that we may run out of time and have to delay anyway.
I might even just talk to just a couple of points somewhat related to harvest, but just the overall story about this, if that's okay, Your Worship. So in November 2025, the council resolved to harvest both blocks, and that was in line with Bannockburn development. And at the time, it was really around efficiency, having a forestry contractor here, as Bex just read out some scenarios. We had, as staff, little idea, how much that land was used. We didn't have any sort of, especially on the Sandflat Road, we had no records of licenses to occupy or anything like that. And so, according to our records, being a small council, that was something that we proposed to you to have a look at, really based on efficiencies of running a harvesting operation of this size. The market was slightly different back then. As we went through this in February, there was a presentation to the Cromwell Community Board from members of the community around the importance of that land. And in that discussion, I think there was discussions around safety being considerations, but not so much around what the trees, their current status on that. Over time, we received a report from the community, and subsequent, we got our own reports made, which did show a level of safety considered within the trees that we had to look at. This council doesn't, or hasn't in the last few years, probably the last, from what we can see anyway, the last sort of 10 years, had any active maintenance in our forestry blocks. There is stands. There probably was some maintenance. There is evidence of some thinning in that particular block. I think if you have a little bit of a look around, you can see evidence of thinning. So there probably was a period, but nothing further. And then in our forestry report that we did get, I think it was in April, right on the timeline, it did identify some hazards that were minimal. I think there was, high 20s in the number of trees. And given this council has zero budget for maintaining our forest, one of the recommendations in there was that we had to undertake some activity to make sure that was maintained. So without any funding, we weren't able to undertake any of that maintenance. Fast forward a little bit further, there were some more conversations around here, and Your Worship and councillors, you have asked me to work with members of the community to get out in the car and have a look at different sites. And we've found, a couple of sites that are just as recent as, not yesterday, but the day before, I did take a couple of members of the community out in my car. We went for a bit of a drive around. It was a bit muddy, it's been pretty rainy, and we did identify a couple of sites that were members of the community thought they would be good for them to use. And as part of that, it is not on our land, it is managed or owned by other people. So it would be about a relationship with those members of the community and people of that land. And I just think it's really important when we do things like this. Just personally, I've been here for 3 years now, and I think one of the things that I've learned in my time in local government is that sometimes I think we can depersonalise things a little bit. And I think, being able to jump in the car and go with members of the community to try and find solutions, and you guys have been very supportive of that and using all of your relationships to introduce us to people to find solutions. That is something that we have tried as staff to get to a good point. I guess, as far as I was aware a couple of days ago, we've probably found a bit of land that was good. And so I think just it is important that, it is hard hearing that if people say that they're feeling like they should leave Cromwell. you know, I don't think that should be the case because it is a great town and we all live within very close proximity with each other. We can find solutions together. And I think just with that said, back to the paper, this is really around, I guess, looking to harvest a forestry block. We do have Alan Laurie online, who is our forestry consultant and has done a lot of work for us and a number of people around New Zealand. And one of his other fellow colleagues also wrote us a report on the graph that you do have in there around the ETS buyout. That is from Kirsten. There is a more detailed report here. What is in that in the report that Bex has prepared? She has taken those tables out of there around what harvest looks like now, and then harvest replant looks like in 10 years' time. And that second figure would be a harvest replant and then deforest in 10 years' time. So I'm not sure if Kirsten's online, but she can talk to that if she is. And that's probably where it's sitting now. That's all of the information that we have to hand. You have questions? Anything you'd like to add, Peter?
Do we want to talk to the designation at this point in time?
Yeah, I think, yeah, pop it all on the table.
Maybe Saskia or Duncan.
Yep.
No, I don't know whether the councillors have got the opinion of.
I do.
They do. So it's on page 3, paragraph 7, the barrister sets out 3 resolutions from this year, last year, I think, according to remove the dog walking status of the dog exercise area. And in paragraph 6 of the barrister's opinion, she sets out her analysis as to why those resolutions are unlawful. It is correct. Those resolutions, in my view, are unlawful. The dog resolution, the dog policy and the dog bylaws just remain in place as they were before. Special consultation procedure should have been followed. Wasn't. It will need to be done that way for the policy and bylaws to be revoked. I think Saskia has got some views on the health and safety legislation and its applicability in terms of.
So, as Duncan says, we acknowledge that the designation remains in force. But in regards to that, council, and we do frequently carry out work on our land. And what happens when we carry out work on our land is the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 kicks in. So in essence, it becomes a workplace, and that means there's special requirements that we need to keep it safe. So in essence, no one can go on that land. So if council was of the mind to fell these trees, the health and safety legislation kicks in, and for the period of time when the works are happening, only the contractors would be on the site. But given the designation is still intact, what I'd strongly recommend is that we do this as quickly as we can, and when it's safe to let the dog walkers back in, we should promptly do that to enable them to use the area. And as Duncan said, if council of the mind to further down the track revoke the designation, that does need to be managed through the special consultative procedure. So as soon as it's safe to do so, the area should be open so that the community can use the area again. Noting, of course, the area would look quite different from how it currently is. But that's definitely how I see it playing out.
And perhaps the matter of the trees and the dog designation, the correlation of those two.
Well, I think my knowledge of the health and safety legislation is not sufficient enough to give a view. It's ability to protect the risk of the public, but you've got some views on that.
Yeah, speak up, please.
So Duncan has just referred that question back to me. So in terms of of that around the safety aspect, absolutely, any felling of trees, absolutely would be under the health and safety legislation. No one would be going on that site. It would be irresponsible of council to let anybody into an area like that. But my view is that it is a commercial forestry block. And if council was to choose to fell the trees, my view is that you would be free to do so. Noting, of course, the community expectations around the use of that land as it currently is. And again, once that was done, and return it as best as we can, as fast as we can, to a safe area for the community to be.
Quick summary from a layman's point of view. So the felling of the trees does not interfere with the designation of the land to be a dog walking.
There's no requirement under the Dog Control Act that the areas that you designate must have trees on. However, we have designated it with trees on, and that's a political decision for us to make. Yeah.
So I wasn't here in the last debate, but looking forward to the debate today. If we do not harvest the trees, or there is not a contractor in the facility, the health and safety regulations don't exist.
So in essence, and this was in the barrister's opinion yesterday, which I read as well, there's some advice that's actually come out from WorkSafe, is in essence, it's a recreational area. If we think there's some concerns around it, it's not a workplace, but council needs to make the appropriate signage and community to know that sort of, hey, there are some hazards here, be aware. If, however, we are thinking there is risk of a tree falling down, I would suggest that it would be irresponsible of us to be letting people hear something that could.
So my discussion about that is, what's the difference in a tree in Cromwell and one in Naseby on council land? Or if you walk down the river here on council land and a branch fell out of another tree, it must be the same risk to anyone else.
Yeah, and that's why it's not the council recreation sort of areas, river track, are not deemed until you're doing work on them to engage the real strict requirement of health and safety legislation. Unless, of course, there was a known and real risk that we would need to mitigate.
And I just want to check on that before I come to Marty. There are some trees that are a known and real risk. And I just want to clarify, you have had an approach from the trust who have been fundraising, who've indicated they would be willing to help fund that, recognising we don't have any money in our budget currently, that they've indicated they would be willing to help address those trees that have been identified.
That's correct.
Okay.
But the point I would just add to that, though, is that, and Mr. Allen's online, he did a sampling of the forest. So what he identified was a small percentage, but not large across the forest.
I concur with what Stu's just said. Where do we draw the line under this? I mean, we're going to fence off or put signage up on the pines down State Highway between Clyde and Alex, which is used by every man and woman and their dogs. I mean, this. Certainly, it's pleasing to see that the PCBU action is only if we're actually harvesting and actually working there. That primarily, this may be a commercial forestry block, but it has very little commercial value. So it has its value as a recreational area. So why are we busting our guts trying to come up with some concept that we ban people from going in there, where we've already identified there's 30 odd trees which are potential risk. There's money in the trust to actually help us go in and fix that problem. We can put some signage in there, which is darn sight cheaper than a fence, and say you're entering at your own risk. And then just to set a precedent for every other, like Stu says, Naseby, here, wherever there's a forestry block, whether it's managed by us or it's on recreational land, reserve land, which is our responsibility. And I can't see the point in harvesting something which is going to cost us, there's no return on the investment.
Before we get into the next part, thank you, Marty.
Yep.
We'll just cover off with their questions and then we'll get to the part of the debate.
Using your argument, we should close the town centre in Cromwell. Because that's a hazard, we're aware of it, there is signage, and yet we know people fall over there on a regular basis. So why have we not closed that using your argument?
So it only gets, the health and safety legislation only comes in when it's deemed a work site.
Yeah,
So
but
we wouldn't, so legally at the moment, it's not the block of land is not a work site. So we at this current point. The point where we were to do works and it becomes a danger and a risk, tree felling, then the health and safety legislation would kick in. But the really the advice from the WorkSafe is really that you do best endeavours on general land to mitigate this. So no, you wouldn't close the town centre at the moment. Not an active work site.
Okay, question from, oh, sorry.
sorry, but neither actually is the forestry block at the moment. This all just.
That's correct.
So
Legally, we can't stop.
So what I'm
people
saying is this just basically the question is, do we fell the trees or not?
Yeah.
100%,
That's
100%
the
sure.
question.
So you can't keep the people off the land.
Correct, absolutely correct, yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a question. If we go back to our meeting on the 24th of June, recommendation B said, recommends to council to delay harvesting of the block until global stability returns to maximise financial return. So at that point, we were just simply looking at whether or not it was economically viable to do it. That was only 14 days ago. Have we actually got some figures now that tell us that it is economically viable to do so?
Yes, that's why it's come back to us to address the monetary thing. This conversation is now about just the felling of the trees. And on that, and in this report is the carbon liability stuff. And I suspect that's what your question is about, Curtis. So we're going to you next.
Oh, I would just say that the value of the forestry is really a moot point in all this because they're poor quality trees. They will always be poor quality trees. The real crux of this issue is what is the best use of this land? At the moment, short of any alternatives, dog walking is the best use of this land. Now, that being said, at best, whatever happens today will be a stay of execution for those trees because in a growing town like Cromwell, that land will have a future value that's greater than the trees and the dog walking at some point in time. My point being is at this moment in time, we don't know what the next land use is, so we can't quantify what the next best alternative is. That's my point on that. The only other thing I'd say, and I thank you for bringing us the carbon information. I've been on about this for a little while. I knew about this very early on. It would have been helpful in the original paper, but that does change things. And for me, stated my points.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. We know there's some issues. Every wind event we've been told could provide another issue. Whose responsibility? And I guess this is maybe a legal question. If we are giving somebody else the responsibility to go and complete works on council land, how do we've still got to, there's still money that's going to have to be spent in order to check the work post it being done. Okay, with that, because we can't just assume because it's our land. So regardless of it, the responsibility lies with us.
That's right.
That's correct.
So the next thing is that, and heaven forbid this never happens, a branch does fall down and does hurt someone. Who is everybody going to turn to? They're going to turn to us, to council. We will be blamed. We get blamed for things that we don't even do. So this is something that we've actively been doing. So I think this is really fraught with difficulty. Actually, we've got a situation where we know there's an issue. It may not be very big and it may never happen. Please let that be the case. But there is still a possibility. And Martin's right. We do walk down I mean, you could, and Cheryl, we could walk over and fall over in the mall. I just know that if it comes back to it, it'll be on council's head. It's always on council's
But
head.
the discussion has been had to mitigate that risk. And that discussion is
but
not
do you know what-
taken lightly.
Oh, no, absolutely. But the reality is that it still will come back to be council's fault if something happens to someone.
We can drive down the council road with a white line in the middle. And the only
Agreed.
risk we're saying is you stay on that side and you stay on that side. There's risk there too.
Yes, I don't disagree, but I'm just saying that's what's,
I
we
guess
can't absolve ourselves from that.
being away last meeting and thinking about it, Curtis is right. The outcome is going to be terminal for those trees over time. I rang a forestry consultant this morning and asked him if it was more economic to cut the whole lot down at once, and he said no. It's not. And they are, like Curtis said, they're rubbish trees. They're firewood trees.
Time's not going to fix them.
Yeah. So they won't get better. The world economy is different. But even if you take the valuation of small crew to a bigger crew, and I'm not going to, with the consultant here online, a tree would be 250, 300 kilos. You're talking $2.50 between a small gang and a big gang. The money's not the issue. We haven't got budget for maintaining them, but I don't think we've got budget for $2.5 million for the carbon credits either. And that's something that our community's lost bridges and lost homes to try to get the 6% rate rise. And all of a sudden, somehow we're going to have to try to drag out carbon money in a scheme that's just been a posse anyway, as far as I'm concerned. And then capitalise that into the next development, of which all the ratepayers are going to have to carry as a percentage, considering $300,000 is 1% of the rates.
430,000.
430,000 is 1% of the rate. So I guess what I'm saying is the people in the Miniatoto are going to wear the cost of this anyway, and the Teviot and the Cromwell. And I'm in the camp of why don't we leave it alone and take some trees out, find an absolute purpose for what we want to do with the land when we do it. And or if there's subdivision, someone wants to buy it, sell some of those sections with the trees on them. Leave it up to the new owners to do with the trees. And meanwhile, we're going into reform of local government New Zealand, where another council might make that decision. And all we're doing is annoying a fair chunk of the people in our community. We've got to get this right, because we'll be fried if we get it wrong. And for all the good work that's happened in Cromwell, the beautiful, fantastic facility opening up, we're actually turned the community against us. Feels like the community against us. And believe it or not, people love their dogs.
That's like you and
Yeah, so
questions of staff? It's at the moment.
I think that what Stu said absolutely makes sense, and also, Curtis, I just leave the trees alone. Cut down the ones that are the problem. Let's find out what the land's going to be used for and then go from there. At least we'll have a purpose in sight for it.
It's got quite contentious. I just think it's important to remember that none of this was done to be against anyone. None of it was done to take something away that we provided, whether knowingly or otherwise. And I just think the decision we need to make needs to be financial, not emotional. But we are an emotional council, like you said. I think it's really important to go back to the fact that we try our best to do the best we can for the people that are here. So no decision that ever has been made or information that has been shared has ever been to be other than the most cost effective and the most community pro approach. And I think we're humble enough to go back and say we didn't know enough, or we didn't have the right information, or things have changed. And I don't think there's any no, we're going to stick to our guns and do what we decided to do at the start. And it's a good discussion. And I think the one thing we can say with our hand on our heart is that we do the right thing for the people and the council, which is financial. And so whatever we come out with will be what we believe to be the best for everybody as a whole. And that's not against any one group or otherwise. And I hope that you guys, at least being part of this process, have felt that from us, that it is always our best intention.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add to Sarah's point, I think if we back up to November, and the original intent was for the benefit of the community, economies of scale, a harvest. And so I guess to not be too harsh on people, that was founded in good rationale. A few things have moved against us. We've heard an outpouring, a very strong community outpouring, that piece of land has a great social value to them, and I think it's on us to respond to that.
Tracy.
Just, David, you said that you'd had a, meeting as of this week with an alternative site. What was the feeling about the alternative site?
People with me were quite positive. Yeah, and positive of those sites and its proximity to water, but also to, the alternative of the sand flat as well, sort of having.
And that's a realistic possibility. It's not something that is going to be prevented by some kind of mechanism in the future.
I think it's realistic. It would be a conversation with the landowner, and then we would step back from it because it's not our land. And so, I know that this group has formed a trust, and they're keen to find alternatives as well. So, and I guess that would be a conversation between the trust and those landowners. So I probably wouldn't want to speak for them, but the conversations we've had have been optimistic.
Thank you.
Come to this process partway through, wasn't here in November, and been a lot easier to make decisions now with the information we've got. So just for process, it would be really good to have had that at the start. As even from 2 weeks ago, Councillor Patterson asked for some figures here. I'm looking here, you got a 1 in 6 chance of making money out of felling these trees in the last 3 years. That's pretty low. So yeah, just having all that information to start with gives us a much more credible decision to be made.
One last comment, Marty.
I'd just like to thank staff for clearing up the health and safety aspect, because one of the reasons we went into this initially was because we're risk adverse and the fear of ramifications of an accident happening there. And have that clarification that it does become a workplace if we're actually in there working, but the rest of the time it's actually a recreational resource. And that's the most critical thing. Put aside potential possibly, that is the most critical part of the decision we're going to make today, is this is a recreational resource, not a workplace.
Quickly though, there will be an ongoing cost to us because as the winds come through that area, as Saskia pointed out, we'll need to go back and regularly track the trees.
Correct. And if we learn any lessons from the issues that we had with the half mile, and when you have an active community group willing to participate and have raised considerable amount of money to support then a partnership between a community organisation and council for ongoing maintenance of that area will be critical in its success. So yes, there will be costs, but those costs could potentially be shared.
Thanks, Marty. I'm going to come to Curtis for a final comment, and then I'm
Just on Peter's point, that cost and obligation will only grow. So there is a finite life on those trees.
Yeah.
We've got to be clear on that. This is a state of execution if it goes ahead. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think we could accurately describe this as dog's breakfast, and not the delicious kind, that was nutritious. Geopolitical aspects have had a significant impact on the November 2025 decision, and we could not have anticipated that in Iran would have this much of an impact on logging, forestry, ETS, wood prices, the rest of it. I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the huge amount of staff time and effort that have gone into these multiple reports since November, because it has not just been bringing it to the table, it has been all the work in the background. And I'd also like to acknowledge the significant amount of work from the Cromwell Dog Trust, which didn't exist as a trust this time last year, and the huge amount of effort that they and the wider community have put into this. And I wish that our community were as engaged in all of council's decision-making processes. If funding is able to be provided from the trust to enable addressing the safety concerns of some of those trees that are in there, I think we need to be actively exploring that as an option. And if the removal of the status has been deemed to be unlawful, we actually do need to address that as a priority. We have some recommendations in front of us. I am not sure from the discussion that they are going to find favour, but does anybody want to move the recommendations in front of us? And if not, I will go with some different ones. So If we look to option 2, which is a recommendation that we continue to harvest the Bannockburn only block and defer Sand Flat Road harvest. We do need to harvest and the Bannockburn Road block. That is a priority. Recommendation 2, perhaps something along the lines of acknowledges the Cromwell Dog Trust if noticed and noted an interest in providing some funds to address the safety concerns and directs DE.
Yeah.
Direct staff.
He's looking at me.
To explore that as an option. Another recommendation I'd like to know?
No, just expansion on that one there.
Yeah.
Just to make sure legally that there's no, I'm not going to get this right, Duncan's going to say, when there is public funds being used for on council property, there's not going to be any issue. There's for the Curtis calls it pollution. So there'd have to be some arrangement that this is money, how this money is provided. So that would just be the legal side. That's operational.
And then would you like one in there that, I don't think we can pass a recommendation that notes this is a state of execution, but
Well, we can continue. Harvesting, development work will continue.
agrees to delay,
Yeah.
agrees to delay harvesting of
Or to market.
Sand Flat Road block.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I don't know if it needs a resolution, but definitely for noting in the minutes, those previous resolutions revoking or seeming to
That'll be the
revoke,
next one. Yeah.
they are invalid anyway, but essentially rescinded, and we note that the status remains as a dog walking area.
Yeah.
So F goes.
So if we got that number 3 around, agree, they're delayed. And then number 4 will be notes the revocation of previous resolutions. And then the 5th one will be notes the dog walking status is retained. Okay, whether you wanted the same one or a separate one. And are we going to put appropriate signage?
Yeah, add that.
There is still a risk. We'd like people to be aware of the risk and not be in there thinking there's no risk. If that can be dealt with legally via appropriate signage, acknowledging that we will work to address some of those safety concerns,
As identified.
but we won't be able to address all of them.
Just on that, there is no budget for that stand. I just wonder if the council would entertain a budget or something that we could use to just leave with the maintenance, just
Community budget?
Oh, hang on.
just see the presentation.
Is it a Cromwell?
No, we
Is it a Cromwell? Is it a Cromwell?
Guys, just on that, because I would like the team to have some budget. I think that there might be an enthusiasm to match the budget that has been established by the Cromwell Dog Trust with council funds from reserves.
We can do that.
We restrictise it, man.
Is it, it's endowment land?
It's endowment land.
Endowment
right.
land,
Oh, here we go.
so therefore it's
Here
going
we
to come out of the Common Community Board money.
Can we keep the money when we sell it then? How long this meeting?
Fund's going to come in Cromwell.
We could find
Will
a
they?
place if you give us the direction,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So
I would like as an interim to get us through to the next financial year, because this will come into the LTP. In the interim, I think we could probably find sufficient funds to match what's raised by the community. I'm anticipating they're not going to go out and raise $500,000, because that would then be a different problem.
Should we put a cap on it just in case?
they've done well so far.
But if it's endowment land, it should come from Cromwell endowment money.
Well, we'll work out the how if you give us the direction of, if it's matched dollar for dollar or something.
Matched dollar for dollar.
But the house,
Yeah, the house, yeah.
important too, yeah.
Would you like to put a cap of
$5,000.
10?
We don't have a quote on the work yet, so.
Oh, I don't like this.
But if you give us direction on what that might be in the parameters.
Why would offending trees marked? They are marked.
The sample has been done, has been marked, but not
But the ones that are in danger of hurting somebody, are they marked?
the ones that have been identified. But I need a
Not
sample.
overall, Charlie.
Sample.
Not the whole.
It's not the whole
Do
stand.
you not have a dog?
So can I ask, are we looking at up to the up to council's contribution being per annum is $10,000?
No, no.
Or is it
This
just
is
a
just,
one-off?
this is a one-off because it comes back as an LTP conversation. A one-off, dollar for dollar with community raised funds to a cap of 10,000. Obviously, if you go in there and then find that there are 1,500 trees that need to come down, that would need to come back to this table. But to address some of those trees that are already identified, I think we need to put
Where do we address the future land use options?
LTP.
Nothing in this resolution to investigate.
This is going to come back, as you've noted, it's a stay of execution.
So then what are you taking option 2 and adding to it?
We've delayed it. Yeah, he'll put them up on the.
Right. So we're not fencing it, just to be clear.
I'm fencing it.
Gonna make Cromwell beautiful again.
Right. You want to put them up, Wayne? We'll have a look and then we can see if they look like they are going to meet the need or need to be amended.
Who's a Cromwell, don't you? It's on for service. There'd be a monument of being in Cromwell soon. What's that? The villains.
Yes, we can come down.
It's a really.
Find trouble
You read it?
trees to address
Target practice.
identified.
Put it in the trees.
Oh, yeah, because we.
No, so to address. Safety concerns.
Well, that too.
Make a silk piece out of South here.
I do wonder, councillors, about D. That is correct if we wanted to rescind it.
No, I didn't. That's not what we said for D. We said notes the dog walking status remains.
Yeah.
Revokes the previous resolutions, though.
Yeah.
So we've revoked the previous resolutions. D, we note that the dog walking status of this area remains.
Yeah, perfect.
And just wondering, there's conversation about LTP. Do you want to just be clear in that as well, as that this will be considered as part of the LTP for 2737?
Yeah.
So we're in E, we in E, so it notes that the Cromwell Dogs Trust have funds to help address identified safety concerns, take out and fill. So we're not addressing him. It's not to investigate options for their felling. And notes council will match these funds dollar for dollar to a cap of 10,000.
Question, please.
Yes, Bob.
If we're going to match dollar for dollar, do you need to say at that point where those funds are going to come from?
David believes he can find them somewhere in his
So I wonder,
astronomical budget.
without having Paul in the room, I wonder if we just say for the moment from the appropriate funding source and we'll come back and verbally update.
Oh, so it could be community funding then.
It's all the money.
Once we work through that endowment, housing raisins, endowment land and the appropriate funding source and Paul's
I'd
probably
just
best
like to
answer
know.
that.
It's probably quite important, right? Because it's the issue
Yeah.
and the savings has been driven off endowment land. So it has to come out of the Cromwell Community Board's endowment policy or budget.
We'll probably just come back on the how.
Yeah. So that's definitely my initial.
We're compromising money
Fair enough.
for the ratepayer.
Get the finance gurus on that one.
The softness has got to be paid from the ratepayer
It's going back to the community.
because it's endowment land. It can't be used anywhere. If we sold that land, it can't be used anywhere in the rate.
This
The area is going to be
in the endowment discussion.
Exactly related to the long term.
Endowment land.
Well, it's then all.
I'm quite happy, I'm quite happy for it to be taken from that fund, which, yeah,
So we
I'm
get the
quite
money
happy
back.
for that.
No, anybody.
Everyone's got no money, we're getting it out.
Remains and
You get your hand up.
We give it money.
Exactly.
What happens to the wood once it's cut down, these 20 odd offending trees? What happens with the wood?
David, when the trees are felled, oh, you mean the damaged ones? Oh, okay, yeah.
Say the question again.
What happens to those trees, the offending or the dangerous trees, once they're felled?
Just leave them in there.
Probably, yeah, probably the cheapest version would probably be just to leave them.
Would you not allow the likes of Cromwell Round Table or Rotary or Lions Group to go in and gather it up?
Oh, that's usually what we would do, yeah, but council wouldn't take them and try and sell them.
Community Wood's going to have to go and do it ourselves so we can afford to pay the bill.
Yeah. There might be a fundraising thing that we can work with, like that's probably operational, work out the how with the trust.
Roll your sleeves up, Anna Harrison.
Yeah, that could be a fundraising initiative to help, you know, go beyond that, yeah.
Pay for the next ones that fall down.
Yeah,
We're going to read out the resolutions for those who are online that perhaps can't see them. A, receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B, agrees to delay harvest of the 57 hectare block located on Sandflat Road, Bannockburn, Lot 3 DP 403966. C, agrees to the revocation of the previous resolutions 2521-9 Part F and 2674 Part C as they are unlawful. Notes that the dog, are you happy that that's accurate, Saskia?
Yes, correct. Yeah, happy with
Notes that the dog walking status of the block remains and that appropriate signage will be installed. Notes that the Cromwell Dogs Trust have funds to help address identified safety concerns and notes council will match these funds dollar for dollar up to 10,000 from the appropriate funding source. Notes that the future of the Sandflat block will come back to council as part of the 2027-37 long-term plan. Rises the chief executive to do all that is necessary to give effect to these resolutions. Martin would like to move it. Hold on, we'll move and second it and then we'll go to questions. Sarah?
No, I
would like to second it.
Second.
Okay, Martin and Sarah, questions?
Just that part, David mentioned that they would come back. Do we need to have an E? That we'll have advice as to where that funding source comes from. It will be in.
That's coming back to us.
It's been, that'll come back to us, but it's. So you're happy that's sufficient without it being part of it?
He probably covers that because, well,
Peter has.
we won't have anywhere to approve it.
I'm pretty confident what Stu has suggested is correct. I just
Yeah.
want to check with the
Okay,
finance
okay.
team, no.
So we've had that moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Nice.
Thank you to those who joined us on the public gallery today. And that brings us to the end of our formal meeting and the date of the next meeting where we'll have more fun stuff on the agenda that those in the public forum are welcome. 29th of July.